And when you look at the 49ers, right, with McCaffrey going out with the obliques, and what does oblique mean? I think that means kind of like inconsequential,
acute angle,
Yeah.
right angle, oblique
Yeah.
angle.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to week 7 of Don't Ask Me Why, our podcast that covers everything related to the NFL, the greatest game, at least in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. Roger here, along with my colleague Reggie. Reggie, how are you doing
They
this
do
evening?
like football everywhere else internationally, but it's not our football.
It's getting there.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, London, Frankfurt, upcoming.
I heard the strangest thing on the way home today. They were talking about the Super Bowl being held somewhere in Europe. And I'm like, no, come on now. That's enough. They can have some games a year, but come on. Not the Super Bowl.
I mean, they could put it practically anywhere. They're going to pack it out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, they could, they'd build a stadium, probably seat 200,000.
Right. The power of the shield.
Power of the dollar, too. So without further ado, let's dig right into the most important thing about this week's show. And that's where the DAMW podcast stands right now over the last month. Verifiable. Go back and watch the podcast before this
Fact
one
check.
if you have any doubts as to our record against the spread in the NFL. 65%, 15, 8, and 1 during that time. 65%. So you might want to consider maybe what we're throwing at you this week, if you're trying to fatten your wallet a little bit.
No BS.
15, 8, and 1 is no small task. So, Reggie, as we get started this week, I'm looking at some key topics, key takeaways, as we're moving almost to the halfway point of the season. Parity now in the NFL is becoming a more tangible topic, especially when you had the top 2 teams in the league lose last week. And then there were none.
We watch college football as well. I kind of look at it kind of similar to how the college football season is going as well. There's no clear-cut best few teams in college. And so looking at the Eagles and San Fran prior to this past weekend, they were, head and shoulders the best teams in the league. Now they're 5-1, and there are 3 other teams that are 5-1. So they went from the best teams in the league to among the best teams in the league. So I really think they came back down to earth. We talked earlier in the season that championship teams need to weather the storm, be resilient. The 49ers on the road with a tough loss with Cleveland's 3rd starting quarterback. Journeyman in training, if you will, PJ Walker. Shout out to PJ. I remember him at Temple. I liked him at Temple. But they not only took an L, they suffered some injuries as well. We'll touch on that in a sec. And then just the inconsistent play of the Eagles finally caught up with them. The bottom line is, as Hurts goes, so does the Eagles. He has to be more consistent.
Right.
He has to play better. I think he has it in him. He's shown it. So I think both teams will get it in order save any major injuries.
Yeah, the cream will come to the top. And Jalen Hurts now, I was surprised to see this stat like earlier in the week, that he's got 7 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. So that surprised me a little bit, but he remains and will remain, so dangerous because his versatility and all the things that he can do beyond throwing the football. So that's almost like a bonus. If you get Jalen Hurts being a prolific passer on top of everything else, then, watch out.
That's a very nasty ratio.
Yeah, but I think 3 of those were last week, right?
One probably wasn't his fault. Bounce off of Goddard. Some weird stuff happened. But nonetheless, on paper,
right,
that's nasty.
So injuries in the NFL, they're mounting. And you look at the teams that are most capable of weathering a storm when it comes to injuries. And some teams are built for it. Others sort of have to pray that, gosh, if more than our one or two marquee players gets hurt, we're in trouble. No, when you look at the 49ers, right, with McCaffrey going out with the obliques, and what does oblique mean? I think that means kind of like, inconsequential, that's an
I was going to
oblique
ask you
reason that,
the same question. Isn't like acute angle,
yeah,
right angle, oblique
yeah,
angle? I yeah,
yeah,
I
right. Can't
yeah,
really explain it.
yeah.
It's oblique, but it seems to be a popular injury in the
Yeah,
NFL,
everybody's trying to
the
get the
oblique.
oblique.
Hey, Bill Belichick, the Patriots have like 20 guys on their injury report this week, and I wonder if maybe 10 of them
I
aren't
bet
oblique.
that's a hot injury.
Let
me get the oblique.
So anyway, Debo looks like he's going to play. Trent Williams had an ankle sprain, but fortunately, it wasn't one of those dreaded high ankle sprains that takes weeks to come back from. Trevor Lawrence, another key injury. They play Thursday. They play the night that we're on with the podcast. And, so coming up. So he looks like he's ready to go. Detroit, interesting situation there, Reggie. They're two key running backs, Montgomery and Gibbs. Montgomery looks like last thing I saw today, is going to be out for a while. And Jahmyr Gibbs probably going to return, probably going to play. And they have some other guys waiting in the wings. One thing that I remember is that they can kind of weather a running back storm. I believe it's more system oriented with Detroit and a really good offensive line.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the O-line. The O-line from the start, that's probably been their biggest strength. They pretty much manhandled Kansas City in that opening game and really have been a huge part of their success up to this point. So
they're healthy.
Absolutely.
They're healthy.
So they're hampered from a depth perspective at the running back position. As long as Goff doesn't turn the ball over, and Goff plays pretty well, and to that Rams Goff that we saw a few years ago, I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to that matchup, and they're playing. Are they playing? Who are they playing?
Detroit's playing Baltimore in Baltimore.
That's going to be a real challenge for both teams. But I like Detroit as long as they can be healthy. But to your point, I think they can weather the storm when it comes to depth at the running back role with such a strong offensive line.
And I don't mean to throw anything back at you, but like in week 1, week 2, or whatever, when I suggested that Jared Goff was one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, your response, I remember it clearly because I was so hurt. You said one of the top 10 quarterbacks in Michigan?
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that. What county is Detroit?
Oh, really?
Detroit County.
Okay. Oh, boy.
Auburn Hills County, whatever county. But no, in all seriousness, he's played well. He hasn't been out there just lighting things up, but I don't think he has to. The main thing with a lot of these players, not only quarterbacks, but skill position players who have the ball in their hand often, is to not turn the ball over, not fumble, not throw interceptions, not have a bad snap, all those things. So if we can keep those elements out of it for a quarterback like Jared Goff, where if he does throw a few picks, that could change the tide of the game and get to him mentally, I think they'll be okay.
I feel fully confident with him if I'm Detroit. And I'll say that he has resurrected his career. When he came to Detroit from LA, he had a horrible year or two. It was kind of the word on the street that, he's on a short leash, or else might even be done career-wise if he didn't turn it around real quick. And so now I don't see that being the case for quite a while.
I think they have their long-term solution at QB. He's only in his fourth or fifth year. So I do like
Yeah.
him as their main guy, and they can focus on strengthening other areas, maybe adding another wide receiver in a draft. But I do like what the Lions are doing.
Yeah. And they're all playing with confidence. And I think that confidence sort of trickles down from Dan Campbell. I think it
Absolutely.
trickles down from the head
Absolutely.
coach.
Absolutely. I'm sure Alex Fields enjoyed that little segment right there. I'm sure.
I know that guy. Yeah. So I wanted to touch a little bit on just some glaring bad coaching decisions in the play last week. Just a couple situations without going into great detail, because I will say this. When it comes to people bashing coaching decisions, they're so fickle when they bash coaches when it comes to decisions like, oh, they should, why do they go for it on 4th and 2? Why did, and coaches will be the first one to tell you that if it worked, it was a great decision. If it didn't work, it was a horrible decision, and that's how fans are. So I think that when you look at bad coaching decisions, you have to look at only the glaring ones, only the ones that everybody would look at and go like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so the things that I picked out from last week were, the Giants in their game. They're on the 1 yard line with 14 seconds left in the first half. They're already ahead by 6, and they have no timeouts. And they run a running play from the 1 yard line. They get stuffed. They don't have time to get another play off. They're already up 6. They kick a field goal. They're up 9 going into the half. And they run a running play with no timeouts left. Maybe what you said about their coach 2 or 3 weeks ago being, potentially on the hot seat.
His seat is flaming, like scorching. I'm telling you. But yeah,
More so in New York than any other place.
yeah, that's nothing out of the ordinary for him. Bad coaching decision. It sounds like so.
The only other instance that I had was with Arthur Smith, the coach of Atlanta, because his faux pas, if you will, during the game against the Commanders were multiple. It was clock management. It was they went for 2 in the third quarter when they were rallying. They went for 2 when they were down by 8 in the third quarter. What are you doing that to cut the lead to 6? What is that? I know that a lot of these coaches rely on analytics, but that analytic I don't get. Down by 8, third quarter, kick an extra point, you're within 7.
They have to have not only the analytics at hand and at their disposal, but they have to have a feel for their team, for their squad, for the moment in the game and the momentum and understanding. Right.
Desmond
You really
Ritter.
can't rely exclusively on numbers and data. You have to have that feel, that inherent sort of, gut feeling of, all right, this is what the team needs. This is what will get the fans into it. Maybe going against the grain, going against the analytics, where it's not costly if you do it. And really, a lot of times, fans are clamoring for a certain move. Like if it's 4th and 1 on the and you're in the other team's territory at the 45, 4th and 1, and you send a punter out, you're like, come on. So the fans would be pushing for you to go for it. And I think a lot of coaches kind of understand that, and they understand the feel of the game. And maybe that's something that Arthur Smith may have a deficiency in, because this isn't the first time I've heard this a few times being down here in Atlanta. And I'm starting to believe that he may have gotten hired because his first name is Arthur.
Kind of a funny name for a head football coach, Arthur Smith,
The owner is about to coach the team. I'm like, oh, that's blank. Oh,
yeah, right. Arthur Blank.
But yeah, that was pretty bad.
Shortly after that debacle, they had 1st and goal on the 1 yard line. And of course, they got a delay of game, pushing it back to the 6, followed up by an interception in the end zone. In the end zone. Yeah. So we get to, again, a topic that I just want to touch on real quick. We're talking about you and I were talking about it yesterday, the importance of special teams anymore in the NFL. Now, to me, I think
Mm-hmm.
kickoffs are gone. Kickoffs
Yeah.
are a relic anymore. They've made it to where every kickoff, 90% of them are going to go out of the end zone. That takes away that element, which I used to love, that element of long kickoff returns, but no more. So to me, the idea of guys making a roster in the NFL with a good portion of that evaluation being on how they play on special teams, right? We want to keep this guy because he's a great special teams player. Now I don't think that much so anymore. Punt returns, those are important still, just as they always have been. But I think it's a kickers and a punters thing in terms of value. And I look at Tress Way, the All Pro punter for the Commanders every year. How punters in that category can flip the field, during the course of a game, and flip the whole course of
I
the
agree.
game.
It's either the punter flipping the field, coffin kick, what have you, your place kicker, bombing a 55 or 60 yarder, and that's pretty much it.
Well, I was just going to say about place kickers. How teams will dump a kicker that gets cold, and then they'll bring in kickers. I've got a mental image of like all these kickers that are out there as free agents, just driving through the country like in a bus, waiting for the next stop to where they all get off. They all go out and kick, like 10 kicks to see who gets the gig. They're just a traveling band of free agents,
There's a YouTuber who used to kick in college, and he goes to different, I believe, high school stadiums, and he does challenges of kicking the ball and seeing if he can kick the ball further than the actual kicker on the team. And so
Right.
he's gone viral doing that, and he's like really good. Where there are teams that have shown interest, but he's like, you know what? I'm good because I'm making more money doing this than I would on a roster in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. My apologies for not knowing the gentleman's name, but I want to find that out. And but I think that's interesting. Yeah, I want to bring it up because to that point, devalued. I mean, it's so devalued that folks are getting more money outside of the NFL for their specialty in kicking. So, but all in all, you're right. Special teams is sort of optional. You got these other rogue leagues like the XFL who have like eliminated it or have completely altered the format that we're used to. So I would say in 10 years, do you think that in 10 years a kickoff is even going to be part of the game?
Probably not, and that's sad to me.
We've had crazy memories of, I remember Devin Hester, the opening kickoff in the Super Bowl against the Colts in 2007, returns it for a touchdown. Moments like that, are just magical. Brian Mitchell, one of the greats of Washington. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's get into our portion of questions from the sources that we're on. And again, just to reiterate, we're on our YouTube channel, via Instagram, Google, Twitter, Spotify, pretty much any place where you can find your favorite podcast, you will find us there.
By the time this airs, we'll be on TikTok as well. So look out for that.
Let's get into some fan mail and some questions on, I guess, mainly through YouTube from people that have been consuming the podcast over the past few weeks. What do you have for us there?
Let's see. We got something from Darren. Hey guys, this is Darren from Woodstock, Georgia. I know where Woodstock, Georgia is. Can you help settle this argument? Is Julio Jones a Hall of Famer? I'm going to guess that this is coming from the more recent news of Philadelphia signing him to a 1 year. I think he's on the practice squad or
Yeah.
something. I read this question and I was like, let me do a little research. I was like, the eye test tells you he's a Hall of Famer, period. Then I did some research
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, 11 years with 11 years in the league, 8 of those with the Falcons, I believe. He has he has a total of,
Hmm.
and I was floored when I saw this. He only has 63 touchdowns. Now, being that I was a resident here in Atlanta, I do remember that a lot of the fan base were a little fickle and were like, Matt Ryan this, Matt Ryan that, and I don't like Matt Ryan. He's not Vic. But I kind of understand some of that because he only had one double-digit touchdown year with the Falcons, and pretty much 63 touchdowns. That's not
Hmm.
HOF worthy, really. And also, just to put in perspective, let's put it in perspective. I think a lot of people would agree that Matt Ryan is probably the best quarterback that the Atlanta Falcons have had. Andre Rison, one of my favorite players.
I remember
Michigan State, absolutely.
Michigan State, right?
Flintstone, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Andre Rison, he has 84 touchdowns in his career, and he has a Super Bowl ring with Green Bay. Caught a touchdown in that game as well. Of those
Hmm.
84 touchdowns, he had 56 touchdowns receiving with the Falcons in a 5-year period. So he's nowhere near getting in the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. But Julio, we might have to, pump the brakes a little and just kind of see exactly what he does these remaining years, and hopefully he can cross some thresholds to make it a more obvious second ballot, maybe first ballot choice. What do you think?
I think you hit on two words that I was going to use shortly after you did, which is the eye test. To me, it's a no-brainer. Julio Jones is a Hall of Famer. I didn't even blink thinking about this one. I was like, there's no question he's a Hall of Famer, because a lot of it in my mind has to do with how you dominated during your, the primary phase of your career, your key production years, and how you ranked with your
Yes,
peers during that time. And I believe that he was, very, very upper echelon during
I
during
totally
the
agree
peak
with that.
times of his career.
I think one of the main requirements for Hall of Famers, and this is kind of um, my gripe, kind of sort of, with what's our running back from the Jets, Curtis Martin, where Curtis Martin's a Hall of
Hmm.
Famer.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
never the best running back or considered the best running back in the league. Whereas Julio
right,
Jones, for a stretch, was the best wide receiver in the league. So that's to his credit.
yeah,
Touchdowns be damned. He was still looked at as being, we got to double team, we got to bracket him, we have to shift focus to him on defense. So players like that, on the strength of that alone, are deserving of the Hall of Famer, but it's not as clear cut as I thought it would be from a stat standpoint.
right. Well, he was always a
Yeah.
fantasy league pick of mine in the years that I played fantasy leagues. I always tried to pick him up, and you had to pick him up in early rounds, or you weren't going to get him.
So I'm gonna hop over to YouTube comments. We have Skitwit, not Nitwit, Skitwit. Anyhow, he asks, he had a couple of questions. He said, how do you guys like Zay Flowers on the Ravens? What's his upswing? Real quick, I think Zay Flowers right now is what Hollywood Brown was a few years ago for Baltimore. They call him the human
Yeah,
joystick or whatever. Um, it's still young. We're only 6 weeks into the season. I do see flashes, but I need to see something that they didn't trade off a couple of years ago to Arizona. He has the speed, the shiftiness. I see it, but you know, will he be a game changer? That has yet to be determined. What do you think?
I agree with everything you said. Too early to tell. Is he dynamic, potential game changer week
Yeah.
in, week out? Absolutely he is, but so much of it to me has to do with these guys that come in and start hot is how able are you to stay healthy and stay on the field for the majority of the season. So we'll see how that goes. But tremendous talent. I like what I see.
Skipwith had another question. He said, "Do you guys talk fantasy football? Would like tips on strategic drafting methods? You just talked about how Julio, you have to get him early, and I totally agree. The constant with drafts is the players who average the most points, and usually that position being running backs. So your your high scoring running backs are usually the first ones to come off the board. I really think, and we've kind of touched on running back production throughout this entire season on the Don't Ask Me Why podcast. The importance of the running back role is being diminished, and I think that's going to impact how fantasy drafts happen in the future as well. Wide receivers are becoming a much stronger and hotter commodity than the actual running backs, even quarterbacks, because they're getting out scrambling and getting points on the ground as well as in the air. So those are some of the things that I think
Mm-hmm.
will change in terms of drafting methods and fantasy in the future as the running back position continues to devolve. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the tide is already turned in terms of how early round drafts go in fantasy leagues. I think it has already shifted to, wide receivers taking the early draft picks at this point.
I got Gene, our guy Gene. He hit us with a very hard hitting and very important question. I don't even know if it's a question. It's more of a statement. Chicken wing eating
Mm-hmm.
contest with ladies and gentlemen over 60. Care to chime in on that one?
Well, it doesn't apply to me. So, and so I can honestly say that question is out of deep
Yeah.
left field. I've never thought about it, but I do love wings. There's a new wing place that just opened real close to me. It's called the Anchor Bar. The Anchor Bar started in Buffalo, and there's one that just opened close to me. And to me, they have fantastic wings. And I'm not a connoisseur, but they have great wings, and I love them. But in terms of eating more than maybe a dozen, I'm pretty much done there. So I wouldn't be a candidate to participate in that
Sorry,
event.
Gene, you got the wrong young hip crowd. We're young and hip. Come on.
Yeah. We'll think 15, 20 years we might look at that.
Give me about 20. Give me about 20, 25. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still youthful.
Yeah.
And hey, Gene's on a roll. And this is in reference to last week's episode, and I think we got a lot of good reaction with Priscilla being on last week. But he pretty much stated something that I kind of touched on as well. Isn't a first date to a sports event a little risky? What if she doesn't like you, or vice versa? You're both trapped for an entire game, or someone is Ubering out of there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like I said, I'm glad I'm out of the game. I'm glad. I'll leave that to y'all single players out there. I'm cool. Y'all handle that. But
Okay, thanks.
I would imagine first game, like me personally, I gotta know. I know. I'm not gonna look like a simp, as they say. I'm not wasting time. So this is a foundational piece in our relationship. If I'm doing it on the first date,
Right.
I must see something, but that's a very low likelihood that would happen for me.
And if any of our viewers, listeners, whatever, that haven't listened or watched last week's podcast, please go back and at the least listen to that segment, because I thought that Priscilla had some great insight into dating. Not only is it related to dates going to football games and where they would kind of fit in. We talked about, like, is it a good second date, third date, whatever. And she kind of scoped it all out and laid it all out in terms of all the variables that were involved in that. So I would encourage our viewers that missed week 6 episode, go back and listen to that. Priscilla was very good, and we'll have her back again.
Running back. The lovely Priscilla
Yeah.
was awesome. Absolutely.
Let's get into the most important part of any of our episodes, which, we're proud to talk about because, again, we're 15-8-1 against the
Hmm.
spread. And for those of you from, that are novices, again, when we talk about picking games, we're not talking about like, oh, I think Philly should beat
Mm.
the Giants, you know, stuff like that. We're talking about, picking Miami, for instance, last week, -14 against
It took
Carolina, right? Not just Miami to beat Carolina, but can they beat them by more than 14?
that took a lot of stones, by the way.
And thanks, because they were down, Miami was down 14-0 in the first quarter. And I remember I was texting friends of mine, I was saying, like, just hold on. And Miami went on and just went on a roll.
They were up 14 to nothing, Carolina. I was like, I should hit Roger right now, but I was like, let me hold off because this is Miami. And then next thing you know, they done put up 30 something points on 'em. Yeah,
Kyrie, Kyrie Kill
I
taking
know,
pictures in
doing
the end zone.
backflips and eating
Yeah.
popcorn. Like, all right, relax. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Another great week, 4-2. 4-2 is really good. And I hope that Reggie and I don't get too cocky or arrogant or complacent when it comes to a 4-2 week, because 4-2 is damn good.
You got it.
DAMW good. So we're happy with that, but we're looking for the holy grail, right? We're looking for that big 6-0 blowout where we go 6-0, and if we could do that this week, that would put us into the stratosphere. That would put us like at a ridiculous win percentage that we will be more than happy to share with you next week. So, Reg, why don't you go ahead and start? What are your picks for this week?
I always got to go with the over under. So my over under this week is Miami and Philly, and I'm going to go over the 52. I kind of think that's somewhat kind of low. I feel really, really good about that. So Miami, Philly, in Philadelphia, weather permitting, that's the only thing that I could really think that could impact things. So I'm not sure what that's looking like. I probably should have looked at the weather report, but I don't care. It could be a deluge out there. I think they're easily going to surpass that. Miami, Philly, whomever may win, 2 5-1 teams. So I love it. Take the over 52 on that one.
Philly's not far from me, so the weather's supposed to be
Perfect.
pretty good here. So I think you'll I
Perfect.
think you'll be
Perfect.
good.
Perfect. So I'm not worried about that one. I like Seattle -8 at home against Arizona. We've been singing the praises of Arizona in spite of their 1-5 record. We've been singing the praises of just their toughness and going out there and really competing and making every matchup a game. But as Bill Parcells says, you are what your record is, and they are 1-5, and and Seattle. Uh, I think this is a game where they can just go ahead and say, hey, you know what? We had a tough loss last week, a game that they should have won, penalties and all that drama that happened. But I think they go ahead, clean things up at Century. Is it CenturyLink? Okay.
Yeah,
Or did they change it?
yeah. No,
Lumen.
Lumen,
Lumen. Yeah.
Lumen.
We should know
Yeah,
that. Anyway, I should know that.
yeah. That's
But
right.
nonetheless,
Right,
but
right,
I
right.
love Seattle -8 at home against the Cards. And then finally, people like, you're crazy taking Denver. I like Denver getting that 1 point. It's really a pick 'em. But I was telling Roger earlier, there's only one direction for Denver to go, and that's not down because they're at ground level right now. So there's only one direction to go, and that's up. So I do like them to win outright. Denver +1. You can take that 1 point, whatever. But I think Russ still has pride. I think Sean Payton, he's tired of being the butt of jokes. So this is a little get back. Aaron Jones is back. I know that. Hey, hey, but I do still like Denver +1. So those are my picks right there.
I like all three. So I'm going to stick with a couple of teams that I think are really on the upswing, and one that's going to be kind of rebounding, I think, this week. Detroit, I love the way they're playing, love the coach, I love the confidence that is, exuding and sort of trickling down from Dan Campbell on down the chain to the rest of the team. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They're getting 3 points at Baltimore. I think that line is very, very accurate. The Vegas people that set the lines, they know what they're doing. That's basically an even game, and then you favor the home team by 3 points. So I like Detroit getting the 3. Baltimore, to me, hasn't shown any real level of consistency up to this point that you can count on. So I'll take the hot team in Detroit at 5-1 to cover the 3, and I think that they'll win the game, to be honest. Tampa is the team that is sort of in the doldrums a little bit, right? So they're playing again at home against an Atlanta team that I believe, after the Washington game last week, is really has a lot of questions to answer. They're probably on the verge of putting Taylor Heineke in. I don't think it'll take much more from Desmond Ritter, having a bad first half or something for that switch to be made. And knowing that Baker Mayfield, the kind of competitor he is and the kind of start he had to the year, I think they're going to bounce back here. They're favored by 2.5. And I definitely see them winning, by a field goal, at least.
Is that in Atlanta?
It's in Tampa.
Oh, okay. Love it.
Yeah. So, and then I've been with the Rams the last couple of weeks, and a big part of that has been, the return of Cooper Kupp, the resurgence of their quarterback. So, even though Mike Tomlin is my, favorite coach probably in all of the NFL, I just think that the Rams are getting in gear right now, and I think that they have too much on offense to where Pittsburgh won't be able to score enough points. The Rams defense is pretty good. And Stafford gets the ball out. If you watch the Rams, like I have the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially when he has all his weapons. Now they are missing their starting running back. He's going to be out. And that's going to be, a little bit of an issue. But the thing I like about Stafford, especially against a really tough rushing defense like Pittsburgh has, is that he gets the ball out quick. And he's been in the league so long that he knows that that's a key element against a team that has a big time pass rush. You got to get the ball out real quick, and he's got guys on the outside who can run the type of patterns like slants and quick turn-ins that he can just throw it on the clock. Like 1, 2, 3, and he knows that they'll be there unless somehow somebody can on the defense can jump a route or something like that. So those are my 3 picks. So you want to go over them one more time again, real quickly, yours and mine?
Absolutely. I have Miami. Yeah, absolutely. I have Miami and Philly over the 52. I have Seattle -8 against Arizona, and then I have Denver +1. Hosting Green Bay.
Okay. And again, I've got the Lions, who are very hot, I think, +3 at Baltimore. I like Tampa at home to bounce back and beat Atlanta. They're favored by 2.5. And the Rams -3 against Pittsburgh in LA. So that's our picks for this week. Go along with us, make some money, fatten your wallet a little bit. I think that'll be the case if you go with us. And Reggie, I enjoyed it again. Week 7 is in the books. We're almost halfway home for the year. Any final thoughts before we sign off tonight?
What is the game that you are most looking forward to between Detroit and Baltimore, or Pittsburgh and the Rams? Miami at Philadelphia is pretty exotic. And then Chargers and KC. Out of those 4, what's the one that you're going to be watching?
Detroit and Baltimore.
Okay. Is that because it's local and they'll be on?
It is local, so I'll be able to watch the whole game, in its entirety. Normally I'm on Red Zone, because I love watching Red Zone bouncing back and forth. But having Baltimore, the whole game on, and I'm sort of jumping on the Detroit bandwagon anyway, Alex Fields. So I'll be watching that. That's going to be fun for me.
Absolutely. I agree. That's a hell of a game. But other than that, I think I'm cool. I loved
Sounds
it.
good. Guys, continue to watch and consume the podcast again on YouTube, Spotify, Google, TikTok coming soon, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us everywhere and continue to tell your friends and even your enemies to join us. Maybe they'll be your friends if they start winning money by watching one.
Especially your enemies. Turning
So
enemies into friends.
that's right. So we'll see you next week, folks. Have a good one.
Peace.